The moment that stopped time, Times Square, August 14th, 1945. The war is over. Crowds flood the streets like water breaking through a dam, laughing, crying, screaming. Confetti falls like snow. Strangers embrace. The city has lost its mind in the most beautiful way. In the middle of it all stands a young woman named Greta Zimmer. 21 years old, Austrian refugee, dental assistant. She doesn't know what's happening. She stepped outside her workplace to see what the commotion was. A sailor grabs her, pulls her toward him, and kisses her. She barely sees his face. Cameras flash. The moment lasts maybe 2 seconds. That single moment becomes one of the most famous photographs in history. To the world, it was a symbol of joy, victory, the end of darkness. To Greta, it was something else entirely. This is the story of the woman behind the photograph and the truth about the kiss that ended the war. The day everything changed, August 14th, 1945. News reaches New York by afternoon. Japan surrenders. The war is officially over. For 6 years, the world has lived in shadow, in terror, in the constant grinding machinery of global death. Now, finally, it stops. The reaction is immediate, overwhelming, transformative. People pour into the streets. Office workers abandon desks. Factories pause production. Soldiers who'd been training for a final invasion suddenly breathe. Times Square becomes the epicenter, the symbolic heart of American victory. The crowds grow by the hour. Hundreds become thousands. Thousands become hundreds of thousands. Strangers touch strangers. Tears flow freely. The normal rules of society dissolve. The setting Times Square at its peak, a maelstrom of emotion. Music pours from radios and speakers, bands play, people sing. Confetti, office paper shredded and thrown from windows, fills the air like a manufactured snowstorm. The noise is deafening, conversations are impossible. Everyone just moves, feels, celebrates. Police try to manage the crowds, then give up. There's too much humanity, too much relief. A woman holds her daughter on her shoulders. The war's over, baby. Daddy's coming home. A soldier on leave kisses a stranger, then another and another. Everyone is kissing everyone. It's the language of the moment. Greta's day, she wears a simple white uniform, dental assistant for a New York practice. It's just another Tuesday at work, sterilizing instruments, preparing the chair, the routines of ordinary life. Except the sounds from the street are growing louder. Around noon, a patient mentions something. Have you heard? Japan surrendered. She doesn't quite believe it at first. How many false rumors have there been? But as the afternoon wears on, the sounds intensify. The energy in the building shifts. Around 2 p.m., her boss stands up. I think you should go. See what's happening. She's confused. But there are patients. Greta, the war is over. Go. Celebrate. The crowded street. She steps outside and is immediately swallowed. The crowd moves like a living thing. She swept down the sidewalk, carried along by currents of humanity. She tries to understand what's happening, tries to find solid ground. Around her, strangers embrace. A woman cries with joy. A man throws his hat in the air and doesn't retrieve it. She's Austrian, a refugee. She lost her parents to this war, died in the Holocaust while she escaped to America at 15. The war that's ending destroyed her family, took everything. And now the streets are celebrating and she's caught in the middle of it, not knowing whether to cry or smile or both. The sailor, she never sees him clearly. He emerges from the crowd, young, in uniform, caught in the euphoria. He sees a young woman, her white uniform visible among the darker clothes of the crowd. Fresh, pale, young. He reaches for her. Later, there will be questions. Was it consensual? Was it assault? In the moment, it's neither and both. It's the chaos of history colliding with the body of an ordinary person. The kiss, it happens in seconds. He pulls her toward him, his hand on her back. Their faces meet. A kiss that isn't romantic, isn't intimate, isn't between two people who know each other. It's a kiss between a soldier and a symbol, between history and an individual caught in its path. She doesn't push away. There's no time, no space, no real choice. A photographer, Alfred Eisenstaedt, captures the moment. A perfect composition of joy and strangeness. The kiss ends. The sailor disappears back into the crowd. She stands dazed, touching her lips, not sure what just happened. Photos. The photograph is published immediately in newspapers on the front pages. It's perfect cinematic. The pure distillation of American victory. A sailor, muscled and strong, bending a nurse as everyone assumes she is, backward in a passionate embrace. The composition is genius, the emotion unmistakable. It becomes instantly iconic. But Greta doesn't know that yet. She doesn't even know the photograph exists. She walks home in the chaos, trying to process. The war is over, she's alive, her parents are dead. These thoughts mingle as the city celebrates around her.
Vienna?
1938, memory travels backward. A girl named Greta Zimmer in Vienna, 14 years old, Jewish. The Nazis are rising. The world is changing. Her parents see the danger clearly. Vienna, which she loves, the cafes, the music, the architecture, is becoming hostile, unsafe. Her mother holds her face between her hands. You have to leave. You have to go to America. But your father and I will follow. We'll be fine. But you need to go now. Greta remembers everything about this moment, the smell of her mother's perfume, the fear in her eyes, the certainty that this is goodbye, even though neither says it. The escape. At 15, Greta boards a ship to America, alone, young, speaking English poorly. She leaves behind everything, her home, her parents, the life she knew. Years later, she'll receive letters, her mother's handwriting, then nothing. They died in the camps. She'll learn this after the war. The mother who said go, so Greta could live. The father she'll never say goodbye to. New York, 1945. 7 years later, Greta works as a dental assistant. She lives quietly, has built a small, stable life from the wreckage of her past. She's reserved, kind, polite, the American dream, but understated. She speaks with a slight accent, Vienna still in her voice. She reads, she works, she survives. She doesn't talk about her parents, about the war, about what she lost. That's not the American way. You move forward, you don't dwell. The interview. Decades after the photo becomes famous, Greta is interviewed, an older woman now, still composed, still dignified. When you knew it was you in the photograph, how did it feel? The interviewer asks. She pauses, considers the question carefully. For a long time, I didn't want it to be me. I wanted to be invisible. I'd escaped being noticed by the Nazis. I didn't want to be noticed by the world either. She looks past the camera. But eventually I understood the photo wasn't really about me. It was about all of us, about relief, about the end of suffering. Were you happy when the war ended? The interviewer asks. Another pause, a sad smile. I was many things, happy, grief-stricken, guilty that I survived when my parents didn't, relieved that I wouldn't lose anyone else. All of those things at once. The meaning of survival. She lived when 6 million others didn't. That fact shapes everything, not as guilt exactly, but as weight. She survived through escape, through luck, through her parents' sacrifice. The war that celebrates its end in Times Square is the war that killed her family. So when she's swept into that crowd, when she's kissed by a stranger, when her face becomes the symbol of victory, she carries all of that with her. The photograph doesn't capture her grief. Photography can't capture that kind of weight. It captures joy, relief, victory, but underneath, unseen, is everything she lost, the contradiction. This is the central tension of her story. She's the symbol of victory, but victory destroyed her family. She's the face of joy, but her soul carries inconsolable loss. She's American now, but never quite. Always partly Viennese, always partly in mourning. The photograph holds all of this in suspension, a moment when history and personal tragedy collide. Growing older, she marries, has children, builds a life. She doesn't hide the photograph. It exists in the world. People recognize her sometimes, but she doesn't seek attention, doesn't give interviews for years. She's a dental assistant, a wife, a mother, a grandmother. The famous photograph exists in one part of her life, but it's not her life, it's a moment, a frozen second that will live forever. She's a person who lived before it, lived through it, and lived after it. The photograph doesn't contain all of that. Can't. The photograph's immortality, the image endures, becomes one of the most reproduced photographs of the 20th century. It's on postcards, in textbooks, on posters and stamps and coffee mugs. It's used to represent victory, joy, American strength, the end of darkness. But for years, nobody knows who the people in it are. The sailor and the nurse, anonymous, eternal. They become symbols rather than humans. Archetypes, the search for identity. Decades pass. In the 1980s, historians begin researching who were these people. Eventually, they narrow it down. Multiple people claim to be the sailor, George Mendonça, Rolf Wingler, others. The identity becomes contested. Who has the right to claim this moment? One man claims to be the sailor. He tells his story. He was on leave. He saw a beautiful woman. He was caught in the moment. Another claims the same, and another. The truth becomes fractured. Multiple versions of history. The woman comes forward eventually. Greta is identified, an elderly woman living quietly in Virginia, a dental assistant, Austrian refugee. Reporters contact her. The story is revived. How did you feel about being kissed? They ask. It happened so fast, she says. I didn't have time to feel much of anything. Did you feel violated? She considers the question. I wasn't hurt, but I wasn't asked either. That was just how things were then. The reinterpretation. The photograph's meaning begins to shift. Feminist scholars point out that the kiss was non-consensual, that she didn't see it coming, that her agency was erased. Some argue it represents assault, that romanticizing it normalizes violation. Others maintain it's a symbol of joy, that imposing modern frameworks onto 1945 distorts the meaning. The photo becomes a battleground, a contested site of interpretation. Greta watches this debate with bemusement and wariness. The discomfort she grants interviews, always polite, always measured, but there's an undercurrent of exhaustion. She's been the symbol of American victory for decades, but the photograph also defines her life in ways she didn't choose. Ask her about her career as a dental assistant. She has decades of quiet competence to discuss. Ask her about raising children, about her marriage, about living through the post-war years. But the photograph is what people want to know about. The media narrative reporters ask, how did it feel to be kissed by a stranger? She says, it was the times. Everyone was kissing everyone. But the narrative they want is different. They want her to be shocked, traumatized, or blissfully euphoric. They want the photograph to be the most important moment of her life. She knows better. The sailor's perspective, George Mendonça, if he's the sailor, the identity was never definitively proven, gives his own account. He was caught in the moment, saw a beautiful woman, acting on impulse. He doesn't see it as assault, sees it as celebration. Two people caught in history, a moment of joy. There's a gap between their interpretations, between what he felt and what she felt, the complication. This is where the story gets uncomfortable, because Greta is also right. In 1945, the culture was different. Uninvited kissing was commonplace, and yet she didn't consent, she didn't expect it. Both things are true. She wasn't traumatized. She adapted, she moved on. But it was also a violation of her agency, regardless of her response. The modern reflection decades later, the photograph is shown to young people. Many are disturbed. That's assault, they say. Others romanticize it. That's so romantic. Greta, very old now, watches these reactions and thinks about time, about how the meaning of a moment changes as the world changes. The kiss was what it was, and it's also what every generation makes it. She's no longer in control of that meaning. Finding Greta. In the 2000s, researchers locate her. She's living in Maryland, then Virginia, a private woman in her 80s. Initially, she's reluctant to talk. She's lived so long with this photograph that she's tired of it. But eventually she agrees to interviews, to share her story, not to escape the narrative, but to add nuance to it. The interview. She sits in a chair, back straight, dignified in old age. The interviewer asks gentle questions. Do you think about that day often? Not really, she says. It was one moment in a very long life. Do you wish it had happened differently? She considers. I don't spend energy on wishes. I was fortunate. I survived the war. I built a good life. A photograph was taken. These things happen. Do you feel the photograph represents you? No, she says quietly. It represents that moment. It's about joy, about the end of suffering. I'm just the woman who happened to be standing there. The grief beneath. Beneath her composure, there's something else. In one interview, she's asked about her parents. She pauses for a long time. They died, she says finally, while I was safe in America. The interviewer waits for more. I've thought many times about that, about the unfairness, about the randomness. Why me? Why not them? She touches her face, the same face from the photograph, now aged, lined, softer. That photograph shows the world celebrating, and I was part of that celebration. But I was also mourning. I was doing both at the same time. The Sailor's Reckoning, George Mendonça, if he's the correct sailor, also lives into old age. He's also interviewed, asked to relive that moment. He describes it with wonder. It was history, he says. We didn't know it at the time, but it was. He doesn't apologize for the kiss. Doesn't seem to see anything wrong with it. But he also doesn't claim Greta as his, doesn't say they had a connection. She was just there, he says, and I was happy, and I kissed her. The simplicity is almost brutal. The divergence, here's the gap between their stories. For George, it was a moment, a gesture, a pure expression of Greta. It was an invasion, a being used, a moment where her body became a symbol without her consent. Neither of them is wrong. Both of them are right. And the photograph holds the contradiction perfectly. The resolution that isn't, they never meet. Never have that conversation. Greta lives into her 90s, George into his 90s as well. The photograph outlives them both. The late interviews, very late in her life, Greta gives one more interview. She's 92, frail, tired. The interviewer asks, what do you want people to know about that moment? She thinks about it, then speaks slowly, carefully. I want people to know that I was there, that I'm not just a symbol. I was a person then, and I'm a person now. I lived through the war. I lost my family. I survived. I built a life. The photograph is just one moment in that life. She pauses. I also want people to know that history isn't simple, that victory came with sadness, that joy and grief can happen at the same time, that you can celebrate the end of something terrible while mourning what it cost. Her voice grows quieter. And I want people to know that it's okay not to be okay about things, that being kissed without warning, without choice, that matters. Even if the times were different, even if I survived it, it still matters. The final years, she passes away in 2016 at 92. The photograph outlives her. People still ask about it, still try to find meaning in it. But Greta's voice is finally added to the conversation, her truth, her complexity. She didn't come forward for glory, didn't want to be famous. She came forward because her version of events mattered, because symbols need humans to ground them. The eternal image. The photograph exists in perpetuity now, in books, on screens, in the collective memory. People who weren't born until decades after the war recognize it instantly. It's become abstract, divorced from the humans in it. It represents victory, joy, the end, the future. But it's also a specific moment, a specific kiss, a specific woman whose body became public property. The contradictions. In that single image lives every contradiction of the 20th century. American strength and vulnerability, joy and sorrow, consent and violation, victory for some, loss for others, celebration while graves are still being counted in Europe. The photograph is beautiful and troubling and true. The young people show the photograph to people born in the 21st century. Many are disturbed. That's not okay, they say. They're right and wrong. It wasn't okay. And it was also the times. Greta lived through those times. She knows the complexity. She doesn't excuse it, but she doesn't dramatize it either. It happened. She survived. She moved on. That's her truth. the meaning making. A photograph is a frozen moment, but moments don't stay frozen. Meaning shifts. In 1945, the photo meant victory. In 1975, it meant American power. In 2005, it meant both consent and non-consent, depending on who was looking. In 2024, it means all of these things simultaneously. Symbols are alive. They grow, they change, but they also need anchoring, need the human to ground them. Greta provided that anchor. The weight of being a symbol. To be captured at a moment of history, that's its own kind of war. You become the property of interpretation. People own your image, your meaning, your story. Greta lived with this weight for over 70 years. She handled it with grace, with dignity. But you can see in her late interviews the wariness. She's not the symbol anymore. She's the woman, and the woman has her own story to tell. The human beneath Greta Zimmer Friedman was a girl who fled Vienna, a daughter who lost her parents, a refugee who built a life in a foreign country, a dental assistant who worked quietly for decades, a wife, a mother, a grandmother, a woman who happened to be kissed by a stranger on the day the world stopped spinning, and then a symbol for 70 years. But mostly a person, trying to live, trying to survive. The photograph captured one moment. Her life was so much larger, the final image fade on the famous photograph. But gradually overlay Greta's face from her later interviews, the young woman in the photograph and the old woman reflecting on it. Two versions of the same person, separated by time, connected by a single moment. She was just a dental assistant. But that day she became the face of history's exhale. For 70 years, the world looked at that photograph and saw victory. But when you finally asked her what it meant, what she felt, you heard something more complicated. You heard a survivor, you heard a refugee, you heard a woman who lost everything and built something anyway. You heard a human being who was turned into a symbol and then, very late in her life, got to become human again. The closing, the photograph fades to black, but before complete darkness, one final image, Greta's hand, older, weathered, resting on the photograph, not possessive but present, claiming her place in history, not as a symbol but as a woman.